everyone. Welcome to our web series, Jibio Post. Today we have Ellen Caldaro with us from Florida. She is a very experienced environmental consultant. She's been in the industry for over 20 years, working in a very niche area. Ellen, welcome to our program today. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background in the environmental services industry?
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me. Sure, I'd be happy to. There's a lot of kind of niches in the environmental service industry, and what I do are called Phase 1 environmental site assessments. And basically, those are risk assessments, the written reports that we generally do for people who are buying or selling or refinancing a commercial piece of commercial real estate, a commercial real estate property. And generally, we'll work for banks or developers or lending institutions or insurance companies, anyone who buys and sells commercial real estate. So we'll often, before a lending institution will give you a loan, they will often require you to do a Phase 1 environmental site assessment. We generally shorten that to a DSA. And they want to do that because they want to know if there are environmental risks associated with the property before they lend the money, because if the borrower defaults on the loan, then the bank is owning a property that might have environmental issues, and they don't really want to do that. So what we do is a really in-depth historical research on the land and the property and the use and any buildings that may have been there before, as well as a visit to the property to see what's currently going on today, who the businesses are, what type of uses they're using the land for, and if they're kind of complying with all of the environmental rules and regulations. So a lot of people will have never heard of a Phase 1 environmental site assessment, because if you're not in the commercial real estate market, it's kind of one of those things that may just kind of fly under the wire. You may never have heard of it. So what we do is, after we do in-depth research and then visit the site, we'll write a report, and we'll come up with our assessment or our opinion on the risk, the environmental risk of that piece of property. And if we think it's a high risk and there might be contamination on the site, then we'll recommend they do a Phase 2, which could include sampling like soil or groundwater or soil vapor, or something like they call it GPR, or ground penetrating radar, where they actually almost look underneath the ground with some technology, some equipment, to see if there's old buried underground storage tanks or other features that might have leaked and might have caused an environmental issue. And there's a variety of other things. That's just an example of that you could do as part of kind of a follow-up or a Phase 2, which is what they call that, if the Phase 1 lists the property as high risk. So I've also done Phase 2s in my career. I've done sampling, I've done soil and groundwater assessment, but the bulk of my career has been spent doing Phase 1. So I've been doing it a long time. The last company I worked for, not only did I do the Phase 1s, they always go through a review process, the reports. So once the project manager writes the report, it goes to a senior level person who reads the report and makes sure it complies with our industry standard, and our industry is regulated by ASTM, and they set standards for the environmental industry along with many other industries. And then the senior reviewer will review the report to make sure it complies with industry standards and with the company's standards before it goes out, to a client. So I've also done that. I've done the senior reviewer job, and most recently I started doing some training, and I was training entry-level people to do Phase 1s, and I found that very rewarding. I really enjoyed that. And then I would also act as their senior reviewer for several months after they were trained, so that they would have the same person giving them advice, giving them corrections, giving them, information, kind of. It's definitely one of those things you have to learn on the job. They don't teach you how to do this in college. So basically, one of the requirements to get a job doing Phase 1s is to have some kind of science degree. So if you can understand the foundation of science, then you can be taught to do a Phase 1 environmental site assessment. So I really enjoyed doing that, and that was definitely something I found rewarding and to be a mentor.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It sounds like, you really kind of found your passion and went for it in life. It's really that's what it's about, and being able to share with others that are learning the industry as well. That's wonderful, kind of a way to give back. Now, I'm curious, how has the environmental services industry been affected by COVID? I know that it's affected many industries across the globe in many different ways. How has it affected your career personally, and the industry as a whole?
I think that it's been kind of different in different parts of the industry. I've talked to some people who don't necessarily do exactly what I do, phase ones, and they've said they haven't seen too much of an impact. But other people who rely on the buying and selling of commercial real estate, like the phase ones, have definitely seen a bit of a downturn, and also a bit of a roller coaster where some months are good and some months aren't good. So as a result of that, a lot of companies are feeling uncertain. And at the beginning of COVID, I was actually laid off by my company, who I had been with for about 8.5 years. And a lot of people were laid off. I certainly wasn't the only one. So since then, I've been looking for a job, but realizing that a lot of companies are kind of waiting to hire full-time people. There aren't that many opportunities out there, because they're kind of waiting to see how the economy bounces back, and if it's sustained long enough to support hiring additional full-time people. And I think that's where a lot of companies are right now, where they're trying to make those decisions. And some of them are hiring, but I'm finding it's few. And some of them are not, because I think that they're kind of waiting it out to see what's going to happen. So currently, recently, I interviewed for a couple of jobs, and I had multiple interviews. I had kind of face-to-face, electronic interviews on Zoom, and I had phone call interviews, and I felt like they went well. I was pretty confident, and ironically, I did not get either one of those jobs. So I know that there is a huge pool of applicants out there, but at the same time, I was a little bit taken aback, honestly. Um, and I've had a pretty long and relatively a long career. I'm relatively experienced, and I was kind of confident that I would land something pretty quickly. But coming from that experience, I kind of sat down and said, all right, this isn't all about me. That's kind of your first reaction, I think. What did you do wrong, or why weren't you hired? And after talking to some people, I'm realizing how many people are probably applying for jobs, and this isn't really just all about me. So I sat down, and in the meantime, while COVID was kind of going on, and I was sitting at home, and I was, thinking about, what I was going to do next. I've always been interested in real estate, because my industry has always revolved around commercial real estate. So I started taking an online real estate course to get my real estate license. And so I'm in the process of doing that. I actually was supposed to have my test in 2 weeks, but it got canceled because the testing center has to do social distancing, and they can't house as many people at a time. So that's going to be rescheduled and pushed back a little bit. But I also sat down and said, okay, if I want to go back working full time for a company, environmental company, that's a full-time job. It's a full-time plus job. So I probably wouldn't be able to pursue commercial, any kind of real estate or anything else like that. And, obviously I didn't get those two jobs that I had interviewed for. So I basically decided that I'm going to be an independent contractor and be a subcontractor to do phase ones for environmental firms. And this wasn't a completely new concept to me. I had done that years ago when my kids were small, when I wanted to work part-time and stay at home with them. At the time, my husband worked shift work, and I would work my work schedule around his shift work, and it worked well. But it was only part-time. So now I'm thinking I'd like to, go back into doing that, but scale it up and do it as a full-time career. I've known several other independent contractors who have started off doing it, kind of as a solo person, company, and then over time, as they got busier, they brought on other people. So I would love to, essentially start a small business using the skills I have and the skills that I've, done over the last several years, and that are absolutely marketable. And I'm hoping to be able to blend that with real estate once I get my license. So I'm hoping that will make me slightly unique in the market, realtor with environmental consulting experience, and give you a unique perspective and maybe a unique point of view. So I don't see any reason why I can't do both of those things at the same time. So that's sort of my plan at the moment. It's mostly in my brain. Um, but I am absolutely taking steps to realize that once I really firmly set, in my mind that I'm going to be an independent consultant, I started calling, former colleagues, former bosses, people that I know in the industry, just saying, who do you know who might use subcontractors? And I've gotten a surprisingly strong response, because people who've known me over the years, people who've worked with me, know my work ethic, they know my quality of work, and they're like, sure, any company would be happy to have you as a subcontractor. And I've been given several names that I'm in the process of following up on. So my old company that I used to work for, I called them up, asked them if they would take me on as a subcontractor. They said absolutely. And just out of circumstance, right about the time I made that decision, I saw a subcontractor job in one of the job search websites, that might have been LinkedIn, looking for a subcontractor. So I sent my resume in, and they called me in less than 24 hours and said, let's get the ball rolling. And, started off with some interviews and filling out some paperwork, and give them a sample of my writing. And I actually met with the gentleman yesterday, and we went and kind of did a mock site visit. He took me to a property and kind of said, what do you think? And it was really just a vacant piece of land. But there were some building remnants left over and some other things on the property that to somebody who's done this for a long time, it was very clear to me that it was a former gas station. But to somebody who was just walking by on the street, probably wouldn't have the first clue. So, I'm excited to start working for him as well. And again, he's a small company, and I don't know how many phase ones they'll do a month. But if I can do that with 3 or 4 firms, I'm sure that I can generate full-time quantity of work. So that's the plan.
Wonderful, wonderful. It sounds like you're really kind of following your passion, and you're taking that experience that you have, and you're kind of moving outside the box and finding new ways to offer your services in ways that are kind of innovative in a way, and looking at
I
your
hope so.
skill set. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's wonderful. And kind of that's my next question is, what advice would you give to those who are, very, very senior or experienced in whatever industry they may be in, who are in the same circumstance, who are really qualified or overqualified, who are kind of burnt out from this never-ending job search? What kind of advice would you give those people?
I actually had that experience too, where I applied for a job and they kind of responded back and said, you sound great, but we've got senior people here. We need an entry-level person. And they didn't even, want to entertain me, because obviously they're not going to be able, they know they're not going to be able to offer a salary that, you're going to really be interested in. And I think one of the pitfalls that a lot of people who are a little bit more senior in their industry fall into is we feel a little bit like everybody's looking at us like we're dinosaurs. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of that's just in your head, and you got to get out of your own head, because, our experience is worth something. Our experience is worth something to other companies. It's a marketable skill, whatever it may be. And, sometimes you just have to sit down and say, I'm good at what I do. I'm valuable. And coming from that point of view, how can I, make myself, push myself forward? Because, nobody's going to look out for your best interests as much as you are. And so you sort of have to, own it and say, I am good enough. I am good. I have something to offer. Let's find a way to do that.
That's wonderful. That's great advice, Ellen. And, that's something that I hope that a lot of our viewers will kind of, really resonate and listen to today is, it is, being good enough and remembering, and kind of self-worth at the end of the day, and taking your skills and giving back and being of value, and knowing that you are of value. The experience that you have is enough. Maybe the market is just it's not stable right now.
Right.
So Ellen, I want to thank you so much for your time today. If you'd like to learn more about Ellen, her work in environmental consultation, please feel free to reach out to her on LinkedIn. Again, Ellen, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much. It was nice to talk to you.
Thank you.